Virtus Aquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 41, Vox Populi. Kakashi pulled himself out from the debris of his command center. He grunted and pulled a steel bar out from his shoulder. He had a grimace underneath his slightly torn but surprisingly durable mask. That grimace became a disbelieving gape when he looked around him. The beautiful village he called his home, the place his father settled in and gave his life for, the land his teacher and predecessors defended with their last breaths, was in ruin. No, that was being too generous. Khan was gone, wiped from the map in a single, massive, devastating blow. Kakashi! Kakashi turned towards the coffin. He rushed to the survivors' aid and helped remove debris from their form with strained grunts. Once the debris was gone, he helped Oba to his feet. The slightly younger man let out a strangled cry and nearly fell again if Kakashi hadn't caught him. Careful, I think you may have broken something. He eased Oba to the ground. The man grimaced and removed his broken sunglasses from his face. A few shards of the lens were embedded around his eyes. The one saving grace was that each shard wasn't large enough to cause serious damage, but it was still enough to hinder the man's eyesight and combat capability. Another yell of strain caught their attention, and they looked to the side to see a mound of debris get launched up by a large funnel of wind. The tornado died down to reveal Asuma rose from the cleared space and helped both Shikamaru and Kurenai to their feet. Further away, a distant shout of "Youth!" accompanied a loud boom that signaled Mighty Guy's survival. A small part of Kakashi berated himself for being torn about how he felt over that. Casting aside his conflicted feeling over his rival's state of being, Kakashi looked around again with a broken heart at the state of his home. The people had trusted him to protect them, to protect their safe haven from outside forces. He had sworn the same oath as his master and their past four leaders of Khan. The first three had fought in the Great War and kept Khan from Mistra and Mantless clutches. Though it was not the first time in his life he felt this way, Kakashi felt he had failed significantly. He was not worthy of his post. He wasn't fit to do what Minato or Hiruzen had done so well. It made them legendary. Oi, Kakabaka, stop being so gloomy. The scolding was accompanied by a firm slap upside the head. Kakashi shifted his eyes to glare at the one who did so, and found a single red eye glaring back. Obito crossed his arms, his body no worse for the wear, but his reserves were low. Kakashi could tell by the subtle increase of breath that his brother released and took in. What hit us? Kakashi's question was soft, but riding his coattails came a rage that burned so hot even the sun would seem like an ice cube in comparison. They did. Obito pointed firmly at the figures that stared down the small group. The commander turned and then followed the pointed finger. His eyes sparked with a desire to make the ones who attempted to attack his home pay. Kakashi took the side of them in. 6 men with orange hair, bizarre piercings, and purple eyes. He planned to take them alive, if only to make their demise slow and painful. First, the removal of their eyes, then their fingers, then one by one I will rip out each piercing, then their genitals. Or should that come first? I could cauterize the wounds. Decisions. Kakashi Hatake, said the most average of the bunch as he stepped forward. His orange hair spiked out from his head. Beside him stood a blue-haired woman with a white rose on her head. His face was impassive, and Kakashi could barely detect any form of life from him. I will offer this once. Surrender and die. Obito? Kakashi tilted his head slightly, not moving his eyes from the new foe. Where are the Grim? They're gone, Obito said softly as he moved to stand in front of Oba and beside Kakashi. His false arm shifted into its harpoon state, and he drew a red crystal from his pouch. Vanished just before the village imploded, right before I noticed these assholes. Kakashi Hatake, what is your response? The man asked. I want your name before I decide anything, Kakashi said firmly. I see you're with the Fourth War. I can guess you're the one who sent the Grim after us. I just need a name. I am Pain, the 6 men said simultaneously. You may call me God. Yeah, fuck that, Kakashi spat as he reached behind him and drew a single short sword, no longer than his forearm and no wider than his 2 fingers. The blade crackled with electricity. Kakashi's left eye blazed red, the same hue as Obito's single eye, and the two fell perfectly into a synchronized combat stance. Then you shall suffer. The most forward pain lifted his hand. A wave of force raced from the palm, and the Khan natives were launched back. Oba caught by Shikamaru and Asuma, while Kakashi, Kurenai, and Obito landed shakenly on the ruins of their home. Okay, that was not telekinesis. I'm guessing gravity, Shikamaru said as he helped Oba stay on his feet. He called himself God, right? Those eyes are the eyes of Samsara. I thought those were just a myth, Asuma growled. We know one of the last few silver-eyed warriors, Kurenai said pointedly. That's different. It doesn't matter if it was a myth or not, Obito snapped, silencing the squabble before it could really begin. He tossed his dust crystal into his mouth and crunched down on it. Flames tickled the edge of his mouth as he glanced at Kakashi. Rin's cross. I wanted to take them alive, but I doubt it'll be possible, Kakashi said with a scowl as he flipped his grip on his short sword and held it in reverse. I've got your back. Obito nodded curtly, and a red portal appeared in front of him, and one manifested behind Pain. He launched his harpoon through and smirked as it impaled the bandaged man from behind. He pulled the arm back as the chain retracted the catch, pulling the bandaged Pain through his portal. Kakashi moved to decapitate the body from behind, but was knocked aside by another pulse of gravity from the lead body. Damn it! Obito cursed as their tried and true sneak attack failed. Then, to his and the other native's shock, the bandaged Pain's head swiveled around in a full 180-degree manner to grin at his captor. A large spike appeared where his left hand was, and the elbow bent in the wrong way. The absence of a sickening snap gave Obito pause, and the sudden weapon was intent on impaling the fire shadow. Oh no, you don't! A heavily accented voice shouted before a wave of fire swept up the bandaged Pain. Obito quickly retracted his harpoon before it could pull him into the fatal fires. A red-headed fondness with a monkey's tail landed at Obito's side, into a side, glaring daggers at the five purple-eyed beings. Obito stared at the newcomers. Master Roshi, hello, lad. Love to exchange pleasantries over some drinks, but we've got some brats to put into their place, Roshi said, his eyes not once leaving the impassive faces of Pain. He clicked his tongue when his gaze fell on their pierced features. Damn, they really are a group of flesh bags, aren't they? No wonder Jiraiya didn't last. What do you mean? Kakashi asked as he slowly made his way to flank Roshi's other side. Both he and Obito had gained little aberrations in their red eyes. Who are they, Roshi? Before they were killed, I don't know, Roshi said, his hand balled into fist when a massive white head emerged from the group seemingly and spat out the bandaged body, good as new. Damn it, hoped Pa was exaggerating. Oh great, they can revive themselves, Obito said dryly. He shifted his right arm back into a hand, and his left hand rested on the on the handle that was strapped to his belt. His lone eye narrowed. So how do we beat them? We'll use the tried and true method of beating the shit out of them. Be careful though, they wield the eyes of Samsara, Roshi said. He nodded at the far end to the tallest boy. Lanky over there is the mortal path. Don't let him get too close, he'll suck out your soul. That's fucking broken, Obito deadpan. On the plus side, it's not like it's instant, and it can be interrupted, Roshi said. He nodded to the ponytail. The grim path, he likely summoned the horde. He's mine, Kakashi claimed, his right eye sparking while his left gleamed in anger. Done, Roshi nodded. He pointed at the rotund body. I'll keep him away. That's Preta. He can absorb aura and dust and redirect it back at you. Bandaged there is the Ashura, the living weapon. I'm sure you guessed. That means the two brothers there are Diva and Naraka, Obito said thoughtfully. He glanced at the most aesthetically unaltered. He's Diva, the divine, and the other one is Naraka. He can revive them. And there's our first target, Kakashi murmured as Asuma, Kurna, and Guy joined up with them. The last of the three had his suit torn all over and was sporting a fat lip, while the other two were only lightly scuffed. Shikamaru's taken Oba to the civilians to receive medical treatment, Asuma said. He pulled two bladed knuckles out from behind him and held them up at the ready. What's the plan, Kakashi? We're deferring to Roshi, Kakashi said firmly as he readied his blade. The breathing volcano knows our enemies better than we do. Don't let the large guy or the tall guy touch you. Yosh, my eternal rival, should I? No, Kakashi shot down firmly before Guy could finish. Guy, your semblance is and always will be a last resort. They aren't worthy of seeing it. As you say, Commander, Guy said with a nod. He rolled his neck and stretched his arms before he reached down to his greaves and patted the side. Two panels opened, and Guy pulled out two sets of nunchucks. He began to twirl them slowly. So then, who should feel the might of Ginyu? Tubby is all yours, Guy, Roshi said with a chuckle. He glanced at the red-eyed beauty with a smirk. Your semblance's greatest asset will be no. Oh, will do ya no well here either, lass. We'll see about that. Besides, Kunai said with ice in her tone, I will not stand back and let you do all the fighting, Roshi. You're not still mad at me, are you? Kurenai moved first. A thin needle-like blade emerged from her loose leaves. She rushed the grim path and drove her blade through his chest. Then she exploded into fallen petals. She reappeared a good distance away, behind the group. On the ruins of a building, she pulled her sleeved arm back, and the body yanked away without protest. As it flew back towards her, Kurenai leapt from the ruins and flipped forward, dropping the heel of her left foot onto the Grimpath's face. The body rocketed forward towards the ground and impacted with a loud bang. Yeah, she's still mad, Roshi said softly. He shook his head, and his body began to ignite. All right, boys, we can't let the lads have all the fun. Pick a path and rip it apart. Roshi led the charge and the four men behind him, although while the paths remained impassive. The Diva path grabbed Naraka and they rose up into the air. Preta rushed to meet Roshi head on, but was diverted by a thrown nunchuck. The blunt instrument made Preta fly back through several buildings, all while pursued by a green blur. Roshi grabbed onto Mortal and scalding the body with his touch and built up aura in his palms. You like to fly? Let's see you fly, Roshi snarled before he unleashed his aura and sent the mortal path flipping through the air. Away from the other huntsmen and huntresses of Kon, a trail blazed fire followed after him. Guess that leaves us with you, Kakashi said with Ashura, the bandaged path gaining a small grin, and Obito looked at Asuma. Go help Kurenai, he said before he glared at the bandaged man. We'll handle this smug bastard. If you say so, Asuma shrugged. He rushed towards where Kurenai was. Ashura saw this and shifted his weight slightly, allowing a long metallic tail to fly out from beneath his cloak. It attempted to pierce Asuma's side, but the man merely sneered at it and swung his left arm up. The tail was sliced apart by a sharp gust of wind, allowing Asuma to pass by unscathed. Ashura scowled at the missed opportunity and turned to pursue, only to be caught by a grappling hook that wound around his body from behind. A face with a glowing red eye appeared in front of him. Don't ignore us, Kakashi said firmly as he drove his sparking blade through Ashura's chest. Over at Beacon Academy, the students were still reeling from the horror the cameras had revealed. A settlement forged by human and faunus alike was flattened, obliterated by a single man. With him were 5 others, all who shared orange hair and purple-ringed eyes, not to mention the 6 men's pierced bodies. That was one of the few hot topics currently being discussed by the students. Yeah, kick his ass, Gramps, Son cheered while he watched his grandfather knock the lanky orange-haired guy around. He crossed his arms and continued to grin. Man, what were we worried about? The Grimm are gone, and Grandpa Roshi is there. The fact the Grimm are gone, they are just gone, is something to be worried about, Blake said with a frown. She stood beside Son with her eyes narrowed in thought, while she glanced between the multiple cameras and multiple camera angles that covered the large screen. The segment to the left of Roshi's fight focused on Guy wailing on his opponent over and over again with his nunchuck. The man, usually thought to be impossible to make frown, had lost his smile and had a serious look on his face. Blake wondered why he hadn't used his semblance more, if his semblance was even useful in this scenario. Another angle, which Yang and Ruby were cheering at, had Kurenai running around her chosen opponent while Asuma kept barraging the figure with his trench knives. The earlier sight of Kurenai walking up to her opponent and shoving her sword into his chest without getting a reaction was odd, but then Blake recalled the apology she received from the woman for her part in Naruto's little shock treatment. Kurenai could alter perception and, in layman's term, control minds to some extent. Blake figured the woman made it seem like she rushed to her chosen opponent and then yanked him away. It was a deadly semblance, one Blake wasn't sure could be countered. The last angle focused on the apparent leader of Kon and his associate. who Blake believed to be related to Sasuke due to the striking similarities they shared. While they fought the man who literally was a walking weapon, the cat faunus was certain that had Ruby not been so focused on Kurenai showing off some serious girl power, she would have been drooling over the man's ability to shift his arm from a fully automatic weapon to a rocket launcher and then to a blade. Behind her, Blake overheard John speaking with Pyrrha. "You could rip that guy to shreds in a second," John said. I mean, like literally. But but hypothetically, if you ever had to fight, someone with as much metal as he has in his body, that's not necessarily true, John. It depends on the metal. Plus, I'd never forgive myself if I brought that much harm to another person. Pyrrha said softly. "Life's not always a contest, kiddo." Blake blinked when Coco spoke up suddenly. "These guys, Pain, they don't deserve to die necessarily, but they do need to." "Are you crazy?" Weiss asked as she whirled around and scowled at the older girl. She gestured at the screen. "These are terrorists. No, I don't trust most faunists, but I don't believe they all need to die for the betterment of humanity. These crazy monsters deserve every bit of death that comes for them." "We shouldn't be allowed to make calls like that," Scarlet protested as the group turned in and looked away from the fight. "The vital war was fought for the right for any and all individuals to express themselves. I don't agree with their methods or message, but they don't need to die, nor do they deserve it. The justice systems will see it through." "Justice?" Blake frowned. "Justice?" Blake frowned. "The system can be corrupted and broken. We saw that with Touchwick, with the Demon Butcher. People can get through the system unscathed. These guys need to be put down." "Hey guys, save the moral debate for later." Sun drew their attention back to his grandfather's screen. Roshi's fiery form suddenly flickered out when a blue-skinned man rose from the ground, his hand outstretched towards Roshi. The Haven student's blue eyes went wide. "Gramps." "Oh no," Ruby whispered suddenly. They looked at her and she pointed at the screen with Asuma and Kurenai. Asuma had suddenly gone still and the camera turned to reveal a silver-haired man standing within a ritualistic circle. "Is he stabbing himself?" Lipton asked, while Sage nodded grimly. "Guys, what? Look, with the con commander," John said suddenly. A blue-haired woman appeared behind Obito with a paper spear stabbed through his stomach. The two missing paths descended when the one that could make people go flying batted Kakashi aside like he was an ant. The only fight that didn't change was Guy's as he continued to knock Preto around the remains of Kon. "What's going on?" Yang asked, her hands balled into fists as she trembled beside Blake. "They were winning. Pain will bring us peace," the Legion soldier using the drones to transmit the fight uttered through his microphone. The man lifted a small metal box and pressed the button on it. The doors were blocked by steel walls and metal shutters slammed down over the windows. The engineer turned and faced the crowd, a small smile on his face. His face chipped away to reveal the body of an Elysian pawn, like those that Team Nox fought so long ago, while Team Ruby faced Torchwick. "Now you will all see the powers of God." Blake stared incredulously at the man while students began to pull weapons or call upon their aura. He was a plant, a figure meant to instill fear, to spread pain by... Blake's eyes widened. The Fourth War weren't just terrorists, she realized. The signs were all there. The mad followers, the utter devotion, the manifested godly presence. It was all too clear now. The Fourth War was a cult. What? The masked Grim, Roshi grumbled as he dropped to his knees. Behind him, the shark-like blue-skinned man gave a toothy grin. "You can call me Kisame, breathing volcano." Kisame said in return. He tightened his hand on Roshi, groaned, falling to a single knee. The shark-like man chuckled as he walked forward and pulled the bandaged mask from his shoulder. He brought it down like a hammer onto Roshi's back, making the faunus cry out as jagged steel pierced through the wraps into his skin. "You fools didn't really think we just attacked Khan with one guy, did you?" What are you talking about?" Asuma asked. He coughed up a glob of blood and Kurenai rushed to his side, steadying him. The silver-haired man that stood behind him laughed and pulled his tri-bladed scythe from his cut, his wound healing over instantly, while Asuma was riddled with shock and blood seeped through the front of his torso, despite the absence of a wound. "Of course, a fucking heathen like you wouldn't be able to figure it out." The man stepped out of his circle, which faded away immediately. He casually twirled his blade as he moved to stand beside the Grimpath. He grinned at the downed man and rested aside against his scythe. The grandpa stepped forward, faced the void of pain. Hidon's abundance of faith aside, it should be obvious. Even a god such as myself has weaknesses, but every god has willing followers. Followers, is that what you lunatics are? Obito asked scathingly while he forced himself to stay on his feet. The woman that stabbed him kept her eyes narrowed. You are treading on thin ice, she said. The Lord has nothing but good intentions, and you slap his kindness away. Oh, how silly of me, not realizing that the genocide of Faunus is such a kindness, Obito said sarcastically. He shifted his right hand into a harpoon again. Excuse me if I take exception to that. It will spare them pain that I will unleash upon this world, Diva said firmly. He narrowed his eyes and stepped back, avoiding the dog-like lightning construct that nearly tackled him from the side. I won't let that happen, Kakashi said. A line of blood poured down from his head. His skull likely cracked from being knocked aside like a rag doll. I know, Naraka intoned as he slammed his hands down on the ground, and a ghoulish face emerged from it. Preto was spat out, good as new. The two conflict fighters grimaced. Their fights just became much harder. Far from Kon or Beacon, in a secluded clearing on the side of a towering mountain, was the figure seated with his legs folded, his left hand set in his right, with the palms facing up resting in his lap. Naruto slowly breathed in and let go of more of his thoughts as he exhaled. Exhaled, his eyes more closed, he felt the wind dance slightly around him, and birds rested on his shoulders. Senses left him as he blended his aura with the natural energy of Remnant. There was so much of it. He could feel the beating hearts of the living. He could hear the ghosts of the dead. All of it was there, rushing to him and filling his very being. History that people forgot was still present. Scars that humans and faunas alike left on Remnant assaulted him endlessly. Naruto fought with his own nature to remain open and allow these dark histories to flutter through his mind. A true sage, does not run from Remnant's words. Fukasaku intoned beside him. The older man rested in a similar manner as the blonde. Heroes, villains, there are none that Remnant truly labels as such. Just children, all of us. From greatest warriors to smallest pebble, Remnant lends their power to us. It is not ours to take. Naruto remained silent as the older sage spoke. He was assaulted with visions of battles long since fought, tyrants and rebels long since dead, and grim that simply were. At one point, he saw a grim run past soldiers towards a child. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and from henceforth is suffering for all, and the suffering lingers, marking our world in a way no human, faunus, or grim ever could. A young boy that was all too familiar fell into Naruto's sight. He was short, with unruly blonde hair and 3 lines on their cheek. Ignored by the masses around him, he made proud and loud exclamations of how they'd have to see him one day. Some cursed him behind his back, others scoffed and brushed his boast aside. The boy's eyes welled with tears. He'd shown them all he was worth being remembered. Do not fall victim to the shadow's emotions. Then those faces became filled with horror. Grim attacked. People began to die graphically in front of him. Few fought. Three in particular fought together against the massive horde. Then the grim vanished. Following that, Naruto's eyes snapped open. The liquid gold parted by a horizontal bar. A toad-like pupil around his eye was orange pigmentation. You felt it then? Fukusaku asked without breaking his meditation. I have to go. There was no room for argument in the teen's voice. He stood up, the birds disturbed from their perch along his shoulders at his movement hovered around him and turned towards the elder. I agree, Fukusaku grunted as he got to his feet and then opened his eyes, which were similar to Naruto's. They faced each other and the elder smirked. It is time the Toad Clan reminded Remnant that we are here. Naruto nodded and allowed the older man to hop up and stand on his shoulders. He tapped his cane and the teen crouched before he launched himself away in a mighty leap. The clearing they sat in undisturbed and the birds fluttered in the air in brief annoyance before finding a new perch on a nearby tree. And end of chapter 41.